Hello, my name is Abhijit Kushwaha and today we are going to begin a very beautiful chapter from our Maharashtra State Board Mathematics Class 11th syllabus, chapter number 1, that is angle and its measurements. Now before we start learning about this chapter and before we start actually solving the exercises and miscellaneous questions, let me take this lecture 0 as an attempt to talk to you about the overview of the chapter. What exactly are we going to cover in this chapter? Now if you see, the chapter name is angle and its measurements. So there are two aspects to it. The first aspect is about angles and the second aspect is about the measurement of those angles. Now you already have studied the meaning of something called as an angle right from your 6th standard. So this entire topic of angles is going to be a one quick revision for you in class 11th. We'll be talking about directed angles, zero angle, one rotation angle, straight angle, right angle, angles in a standard position, angle in a quadrant, quadrantal angle, coterminal angles. So these are just simple definitions that we'll be looking at, but you don't have to worry about it because you do not have to remember these definitions. So we'll quickly read about them, we'll look at some examples, and then you'll be able to remember those examples and you don't really need to by heart anything over here. So this part of this entire chapter is very simple and you'll be able to remember it very easily. Once we cover these definitions of angles, we'll move to measurement of angles. Now there are two systems of measurements that we are going to cover. The first system is the sexagesimal system or the degrees measure, and the second system is the circular system or the radians measure. Now you've already covered this degree measured because we know how to measure an angle in degrees. In your 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th standard, we already know what a degree is and how do we measure an angle, say 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees and so on. But this entire radians or this entire circular system is new to us. So we are going to spend a considerable amount of time in understanding what is a radian. And once we understand that, we already knew degrees, we'll understand radians, and therefore then we'll focus about the conversion from degrees to radians and from radians to degrees. So this is what is the first part of the chapter. We'll talk about some angles, some definitions, then we'll move on to the measurement of angles. We'll see two different systems. We'll see how to do conversion from one system to other and from the second system to the first system. And then we'll also look at some standard values. For example, 30 degrees becomes pi by 6 in radians, 90 degrees becomes pi by 2 in radians. All of these standard values we'll have to remember, but it is very easy to remember them because you'll be solving so many questions that it will become second nature to you. Now why exactly are we going to study radians? Because when you go into higher mathematics, we move away from the degree system and we try to use radians everywhere. So just to give you a practice of what exactly is the circular system, because everybody is using it, we'll also learn about it. Once we cover the measurement of angles, we'll do some solved examples and we'll move on to exercise 1.1. So this will be the first block of this chapter. Now once we cover that, we'll move on to the second chunk of this chapter, which is arc length and area of a sector. Now in your 10th standard, you have already covered the meaning of arc length. Yes, and you've already covered the meaning of area of a sector, and even if you remember, we had some formulas. We had the formula for arc length, which is theta upon 3 16 to 2 pi r. We also had the formula for area of a sector, which is theta upon 3 16 to pi r square. Right? So we'll do a quick revision about what is the meaning of an arc length and what is the meaning of an area of sector. But the thing which is new for us in 11th standard is we'll be talking about these formulas in terms of radians, because in your 10th standard when you were using these formulas, you were using them in terms of degrees system. So since we'll cover radian system, we'll also try to get these formulas in radians, and also we'll also talk about the relationships between arc length, area of sector and central angle theta. You don't really have to worry about anything because these are very simple topics, one or two formulas here and there, but even then you don't have to remember the formula because those formulas you'll be able to derive on the spot. Okay, so the thing that we really need to focus on is the process and not the formulas. Once we deal with this second part of the chapter, we'll move on to exercise 1.2. So there are total 2 exercises in this chapter. The first exercise deals with angles and measurement. The second exercise deals with arc length and area of a sector. And once we cover these 2, we'll move on to some miscellaneous questions, that is miscellaneous exercise 1. Okay, so this is the entire overview of your first chapter, which is angle and its measurements. I'll see you in the next class where we'll study or we'll begin with angles. Thank you.